Hi, everyone. I'm Alan Schimmel,
And I'm Mitchell Ashley,
and you're watching and listening to.
DevOps Chats.
All right. Hey, Mitchell, I think, it only took us 5 or 6 shows, but we finally got our rhythm back.
Gotta get that flow, get that rhythm. We got it. We got it.
We got it. Okay. So, Mitch, interesting week in DevOps. We're going to highlight, I think we're going to highlight today 3 articles that appeared on DevOps.com. But one of them was also the subject of a discussion we had on TechStrong Gang.
Mhm.
And for those of you watching or listening who are not familiar with TechStrong Gang, it's a fairly new feature, only in the last 3 weeks or so. But it's our leadoff for every episode, every show of TechStrong TV, where we get the gang together. It's Mitchell and I and Mike Vizard and Sharon Florentine, Amanda Razzini. And then we have various gang member guest speakers, John Willis, Mark Hinkle, Tracy Bannon, Tracy Reagan,
Bob Russell.
Bob Resselman, who's featured on the one we're going to talk about today, and others, who come in as a special guest. It's 30 to 45 minutes of just covering what's news and what's happening and speaking our minds. So we've now broken those out on TechStrong TV so you can watch just gang episodes. I don't know. It still sounds a little funny to me. I feel like I should be in a Crypto Blood thing, but
The old game.
yeah, the TechStrong Gang episodes. And we're also spinning it up into a separate podcast, so you can check it out there. All right, Mitchell, enough of the commercials. You want to kick it off for today?
Yeah, our good friend, we've known Mark Hornbeek for a long time, one of the people well-known in DevOps, wrote a really good book around DevOps engineering approach to it. And he's got a lot of test background in his experience. And he wrote an article that's on DevOps.com called Forget Shift Left, Why No Shift is the Future of Software Innovation. And I take his article to be kind of a position paper on why this new approach of, well, maybe we don't need to shift anymore, meaning put testing, put security, put all the, try to do those earlier in the cycle. And we can more accurately or just as easily start to rely on testing software in production through the use of kind of really intelligent use of feature flagging so we can disable and enable things and I imagine update them when they have issues, and using AI to help us do testing. And that was the premise of it. I'm curious your thoughts about, did it strike you like a eureka? Ooh, that's very cool. Or did you kind of say, wow, that's opposite of what we've been doing. Is that going to work?
I think it's kind of back to the future. So let me preface this by saying I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mark.
Sure.
Great test engineer and a real student of DevOps. And he really helped us a lot with the DevOps Institute and stuff like that. However, I think this is strike one here. There's a big swing and a miss. And I'll tell you why. To me, it sounds very much like, you don't mind being my guinea pig, do you? I'm going to do some A/B feature flag testing on you. Tell me what you think. Oh, it didn't work for you. It crashed. It did this. You had a mission critical thing going on, but I was experimenting like you're my canary. I thought we moved past, the idea that DevOps somehow means that we release software in beta. And then when it doesn't work, we say, oops, sorry, we're looking for feedback loops. And that's why I say back to the future. I think it's a DevOps cha-cha, 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
I remember I worked with a development team, test team. The leader of the test team says, I think our philosophy is if it works in production, it would have worked in test.
Right. Of course. And if it doesn't, it wouldn't have worked in test.
Now we know. We don't have to go to test.
I'm sorry you had that downtime.
Yeah. Appreciate losing those customers. Well, so I had kind of that reaction also myself about it. Then I thought about, okay, so what in this strategy might be helpful to us, right? And if I kind of pick in there, reach in there, the idea of more intelligent use of feature flags, and could we use AI to help us find out the things that we can't find out anywhere else but in production, not testing all of our software in production.
Okay, I don't
Now,
disagree
that might merit,
Yeah.
and maybe that's
I
Mark
agree.
was
There
going
are
for.
things that you can only find out in production. And that is a great reason why you have those feedback loops and why you iterate and reiterate and iterate again. However, doing it wholesale at the expense of testing prior to deployment, just doesn't make sense to me.
I think we're on the same page. So, I'll give Mark partial credit. How about that? For I think there's some interesting nuggets in there of maybe we can explore. It didn't on first blush, and I wish we had, we could do a whole podcast with Mark talking with him about this kind of stuff. And I'm sure he's got some more thoughts you can't capture in a brief article. But I think you and I are on the same page.
Absolutely. In violent agreement here. What a way to start the show, Mitch.
What a way. Yeah, did I pick the softball to start with? Is that
what I did? That was an easy one. Swatted. back. It's out of here. Okay.
Bounced off
what
the
else
wall.
You got for us?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Something that we do on a regular basis, just kind of given the times and folks looking for work that might be out of work or maybe switching jobs. One of the things that Mike Vizard and the editorial team have been doing is they have this 5 great DevOps jobs kind of rolling article, DevOps jobs opportunities. And I wanted to spotlight that and highlight that for folks. And, these aren't just kind of random, maybe you should be a platform engineer or you should do something else. I mean, he literally is, Northrop Grumman in Virginia is hiring a DevOps engineer as a consulting lead, McKesson, blah, blah, blah. So they're real jobs, and he's pointing those out. Now, will every reader go out there and apply for those and then flood the zone? Maybe, but I think the point is that there are good jobs out there, and the editorial teams kind of trying doing their part to help further the job search process. I'm curious your perspective. Were you part of them creating this, or did they do that all on their own? And
no, this was the editorial team. Actually, truth be told, I think it was the editorial and marketing team. Because still, what is some of the most popular searches under DevOps, and it's DevOps jobs.
Yeah,
and for a while there, it was impossible to hire a so-called DevOps engineer. They're in such demand, but in today's tech climate, of course, there are more layoffs. It's a little harder to find jobs, and there are plenty of people. Back then, a tech-strong engineer, a DevOps engineer, you had to know Puppet or Chef. Mm-hmm. You don't see that as a requirement as much anymore. But nevertheless, there are a lot of people with DevOps skills who are looking, and we thought it'd be a good sort of public service on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to highlight some really good positions out there.
Good. We'll check it out. Hope our listeners, watchers will go check those things out.
That's on DevOps.com. You could search them there, and they're there.
That's helpful. I've got
Mitch, you had another article on DevOps.com, right?
Yeah, I do. It's one about TabNine releasing their testing platform, creating tests using generative AI. But what's unique about that, they've had this capability kind of using the generalized LLMs, but they've been working with Google. And they've actually taken the next step, which is, we would call it, I think we've used the term domain-specific LLMs, where actually you load your code base into the LLM along with what it has as reference material. And from that, it can generate test cases for you, test software.
That's great.
Like that. So it seems like a first kind, at least that I've seen in this area. Maybe others are doing something. It's the first time
I've seen it specifically for testing.
Exactly.
So I tend to call these things now SLMs, small language modules, right? So the AI still has that large language LLM at their disposal, but first it looks for answers in the SLM, and then goes through there. As we've talked about before, Mitch, right? I think we're just scratching the surface of use cases for these kinds of things. This is the first time I've seen it specific to making a testing coverage kind of plan. but why not? It sounds like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I think that's sort of what we all implicitly had in our heads of, well, to generate test cases, we need to understand our own software. So how does that get loaded into, some backend that generative AI is going to use to provide those versus just being in an IDE and kind of interpreting as you're going along. You need to know your code base too to really do effective testing. It's not just unit testing, functional testing in an IDE.
Agreed. So again, that's an article on DevOps.com.
Mm-hmm.
Check it out.
So total boondoggle, sidetrack, rabbit trail, rabbit hole. This may every once in a while I'll think of these questions like there isn't really an answer to this question, but I thought, what happens when we're generating all this code and it's happening? We're generating all this code using generative AI, and it's basing it on the code base that we've fed it. And then the generated code gets added back to the code base that the LLM's using, and it generates more code. And do you get into this
like inbreeding?
Yeah, well, inbreeding or an infinite
Some people
loop.
call it Southern AI.
Southern AI. That's your words, not mine. No,
bless your heart.
But you tend to get when things feedback, when you get these loops, you get feedback, meaning like in the sound, in the sound you get a feedback sound. Are you going to start to get weird errors or weird outcomes?
Yeah, I think it would definitely lead eventually to some poisoning or bias in there. Kind of reminds you ever see the picture of a guy looking in the mirror, he's looking in the mirror, he's looking in the mirror, that guy's looking at, and it goes all the way through, and it kind of it gets a little freaky on you.
Yeah.
But it also distorts, and I think that's what would happen here.
Exactly.
So
distortion.
Don't kiss your first cousin, and don't create kind of that feedback on generative AI generated code.
I'm sure I'm not the first person to think of that, but it was like, that's an interesting problem. I wonder what will happen with that.
I mean, it would be an interesting experiment to see how many generations it would take until poisoning sets in and you got, kids with 3 eyes or something.
Exactly. Or it could get really metaphysical, and maybe there's another dimension of which that AI LLM is working just fine. You just need to grab that one.
Perfect.
Some quantum computing will fix it. Who knows?
Yep.
Anyway, sorry for the sidetrack.
No, look, it was an interesting thought. That's why we do DevOps chats, Mitchell, so we can explore where no one has gone before.
Exactly.
Okay.
5-year mission we're on here.
Make it so.
Make it so. So speaking of exploring, we had one of our livelier, I'd say most lively conversations to date on TechStrong Gang. I think
around Monday of February 26th.
26th, yeah.
Yep.
It was what kind of sparked it was this article that Don McVitie wrote. Essentially, what's the end goal of DevOps? Have we gotten there yet? Dad, are we there yet?
Yep.
And can we stop? I need to go to the bathroom. No, that part wasn't in it. But are we there yet? Was in the article. And,
well, to be fair, Mitchell, that was just the preliminary match for the main event of that TechStrong Gang, which was around working from home. But we'll save that for another show.
That was the cage match part of
yes, that was the cage death match. But
this is just a basic MMA fight, not the cage match.
This was your run of the mill,
But
stop the bleeding.
Don's point was like, well, what's the business goal? What are we end state are we trying to reach? I'm grossly paraphrasing what his article is about, and everybody should go read it because it asks a good question about business value. And I think you may have responded first, and I followed up, but it was kind of that DevOps isn't a destination; it's a journey. Was really the answer. Yeah. It's we don't say what's the end state of Agile or what's the end state of Waterfall.
And quite frankly, at least those have real definitions, and there's a Agile manifesto and everything else. When you got something like DevOps that, quite frankly, purposely was never had a manifesto, or purposely never had a defined definition, right? And now you all of a sudden you want what the end goal is. The end goal is to make software better, faster, make better software faster, higher quality.
kind of metrics that are important to the business, right? It's
and there's no end. There's the DORA metrics. There's other metrics. I get all that, but trying to pin the tail on the DevOps donkey with an end goal is just that, a kid's game, in my opinion, right?
And Don is another friend. He's a smart guy. So he's
Don
putting himself out there with some ideas, right?
Yeah, no, Don's a thinker and he throws it out there. But it also kind of reminded me of the people who were like, culture, schmalture, it's all kumbaya. I want to see the tools.
Yeah, right? All that soft stuff.
Yeah. And so, but they're missing the point on DevOps, which is the culture, which is the breaking down of the silos, which is the cross-functional teams working closely together so they could go faster and better. It's the whole CAMS thing and everything. So, I think Don was highlighting what many might consider a soft white underbelly of DevOps, where I consider it its strength.
Yeah, it's lack of specificity, maybe, or it's open-endedness, maybe is another way to say it. Right. It's adaptability to, okay. Well, and why I say adaptability is actually one of the things I strongly believe is by not dogmatically describing it or defining it. You oftentimes hear me, right? I talk about methodology wars. I remember this methodology is the right one and they're all bad, right? Kind of religious arguments almost. And DevOps is kind of maybe CI/CD is the place to start, but we need help here. This is our biggest issue. Let's work on this bottleneck or this problem or where we're inefficient or whatever. It isn't, if you're not doing it this way, then you're doing it wrong. No, you do it the way that makes sense to you. The principles and the ideas there, what you're adopting, right? And there's tools and culture and process all in support of that.
Agreed. But it's a good point. And I think, Mitchell, it also sort of segues into DevOps Next, our Got DevOps campaign that's coming up. I mean, you're heading a big research project on this about where is DevOps? Do we need an end goal? What's the current state of DevOps, if you will?
And where we're going next.
I don't want to put too much out of the bag, but in addition to survey and interview data, we're actually going to rely on our own proprietary DevOps.com data that we've amassed, over 10 years.
We have a mountain of, and it's extremely valuable. Absolutely.
Yeah, to show where people are going with DevOps next. And we'll be doing slices of that as well. So, looking forward to what you come up. No pressure, Mitch, but looking forward to what you come up with there.
My goal with this report is that, how they can predict that we're going to have a hurricane by people buying all the milk and bread out of a grocery store, by what people Google, I need a backup power supply, so we must be going to have a storm. Maybe we'll be able to do that with a DevOps.
Well, as someone from Florida, I can tell you that shit don't work.
That doesn't work.
As soon as they say there's a possibility of a storm brewing in North Africa that may come across, we're out of water, milk, and eggs around here.
So you're saying the butterflies' wings flap in Africa and
right.
Milk's gone.
It's crazy.
Florida.
But, sometimes it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy too, right? You get people
I was saying that tongue-in-cheek, of course.
No, I know, but you know how I get when you mention hurricanes down here.
Oh, I know it's your favorite topic. In Florida. and working it out.
Well, we don't need measles vaccines here anymore, it seems. It's an individual choice.
I don't know what you're doing down there. You should bottle it, or, I don't know what you do.
I think we should shoot it is what we should do. But, and, we're allowed to have guns. No big deal. I felt threatened.
Yeah. Weren't they going to pass like some open carry? You don't need any. Oh, they did. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Everything goes here.
Oh, everything goes. I call Florida the land
except
of no
reading
rules.
any book you want, having control of. Well, let's not make it a political thing, Mitch. Now
that's another podcast. We'll have
that's a different podcast. Anyway, Don's articles on DevOps.com and a very lively discussion on our TechStrong gang from February 26th. If you go on TechStrong TV, you can probably get it there. And shortly, depending when this plays, you'll be able to see it on a podcast on Apple Music or Apple Podcast, excuse me, or Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Just look up Tech Strong Gang.
Your favorite platform.
Absolutely. Mitch, excellent show today on DevOps Chats, man.
It's been fun. The more we do this, I think it's for both of us, but it's such a flashback, reminisce, and we're still getting to do the podcasting
yes. But you know what they say about, and I'm not blowing smoke here or anything, but sometimes you hear people, the old people, not us.
Those old people.
Say, we were best friends for so many years. And even though I didn't talk to you in 5 years, it's like we get on the phone, because we talked on phones then, and we didn't miss a beat.
Mm-hmm.
I think it took us a couple of shows to get as I said in the beginning, to get our rhythm. But we certainly have rekindled the rhythm, and these are fun discussions. I hope people watching and listening to this find it as fun.
I remember we used to laugh a lot, and I think we're still laughing quite a bit. So
that's a good way to go through life.
If it's not entertaining to anyone else, at least we're entertaining ourselves. I hope it's so funny and useful for other folks too.
Absolutely. All right. That's going to wrap up for DevOps Chat this episode. I'm Alan Schimmel.
And I'm Mitch Ashley.
And you just watched and listened to
DevOps Chats.